Great. Thanks for setting that up.
Not a problem. I'm going to do a backup recording to the cloud just in case YouTube goes crazy. And take it away, Shar. You've got it.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean. Welcome, everyone, to the Identity Special Interest Group for June 1st, 2023. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. My name is Shar Howland, and I'm a co-moderator of this group with Vipin Bharathan and Tim Spring. And let's see, today on the agenda, we will go over working group status updates, as usual, from progress in the community. And then we will hear a presentation from our speaker, Wenjin Chu, on the Open Wallet Foundation. So really looking forward to that. Let's see, we are in a Linux Foundation call, so we are following the antitrust policy, of course, and the Hyperledger Code of Conduct, which are written and linked here as well. This call is being recorded and streamed to YouTube, and I will post that on the meeting page later today. And let's see, we can go over any introductions now. If there's anyone who would like to introduce themselves, this would be a great time. Would love to hear what you're working on in this space. And Wenjin, feel free to introduce yourself now or when you start your talk. Either is great.
Yeah, I'll pop a hold on. When I talk, I can spend a little bit of time on that.
Sounds great. Yeah, Daniel, I see you have a note in the chat. You'll moderate an open wallet keynote at Identiverse, and yeah, thanks for joining before that. We're glad you're here.
It is my sincere pleasure, and if it makes sense to join again and to coordinate it, I would be thrilled to do so. I just, unfortunately, because I'm moderating, I have to prepare the panel and really have a hard stop in 26 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely understand. Well, we're here every 2 weeks at the same time on Thursday. So you are welcome anytime and very encouraged to join. So thanks for joining today.
I'm Char. I'll introduce myself. So for those of you who don't know me, I think I know most of the folks on the call, but my name is Tracy Kurt, and I am the Technical Oversight Committee Chair for the Hyperledger Foundation. I am also the Technical Advisory Council Chair for the Open Wallet Foundation. So wanted to join in the call. I know that there has been some conversations between the two communities of Hyperledger Foundation and the Open Wallet Foundation. And wanted to just be here to make sure that I was adding support on both sides and also answer any questions as we get to the topic on the Open Wallet Foundation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, Tracy. Great to have you. I'm not sure we've met directly yet, but I've definitely seen your name around the community. So great to have you on the call. All right. Any other introductions anyone would like to make? We've also got just a couple announcements in June, early June. There's the Digital Identity Unconference in Europe next week, and then as well the DIDHack, Decentralized Identity Hackathon. Looks like there's a need for an Aries developer to monitor Discord to answer participant questions. If anyone is interested in that or knows someone who might be interested. Are there other announcements or anything else anybody would like to say before we jump into our working group updates?
Sure, I have two really small ones. Number one, yesterday we had the Anon Creds workshop, which was really well attended, really well received. Stephen Karan, Rodolfo Miranda, and Patrick St. Louis did just a fantastic job over 3.5 hours walking folks through Anon Creds. That has been recorded to YouTube. It's up on the Hyperledger YouTube now, and the wiki page has all the links and the labs and the directions and the prep. So if you want to take it along with the folks who did it yesterday, you're more than welcome to. We're also in the planning stages of a Aries Framework JavaScript workshop for later in June. I'm coordinating with that team, but they've got a new release coming out shortly, 0.4.0. And so we're really excited to support them in that workshop. And the minute I can, this is a me problem, not a that team problem. The minute I get that date locked down on my side, we're going to let folks know about it.
Great. Yeah, thank you for mentioning those. I was able to catch some of the non-creds workshop yesterday, and it was really well done. So yeah, thank you for those announcements. And I also will drop the wiki link into the chat. If you would like to put your name down on the attendees list, that would be wonderful. Yeah, for my co-chairs, Vipin and Tim, do you have anything to say or add before we jump into the working group updates?
I would like to say a couple of things. One is I did see Wenjing at the Dublin, Wenjing Chu at Dublin, and I had mentioned to him about the identity working group, and I'm so glad that he's here. The other thing is this SIG is now a conjoined version of two parallel streams. One is, of course, the strategic outlook, which means not just focused on identity, but how it's used in the real world, which is very important, I believe. And that was the original identity working group's aims. The other, of course, as ably led by Shar and by Tim Spring, was the implementers working group that was also part of the identity working group. Now we have joined forces as the identity SIG, and we do not have split meetings anymore. And I'm so glad that Shar and Tim are taking leadership over this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vipin. It's great to have joined forces and merged our groups.
And thanks for that introduction. I was looking at the wiki and just realized, oh, these names seem to be going in alternate. Thanks for that background introduction. And it was very nice meeting you there in Dublin. So taking me a little bit, but you know, I'm here today.
Absolutely, we're really glad you're here, Wenjin, and looking forward to your talk. So thanks for taking the time. All right, unless anyone has any other announcements or introductions to make, we can jump right into the working group updates. Starting with the Indie contributors call. On our latest call last week, we reviewed open issues on Indie Node and Plenum, part of a larger project to clean up the Indie repos. And so discussed and commented, closed those, which was good progress. Let's see. On the Aries working group, let's see, I see Sam joined. Would you want to give a brief update on the last couple meetings in that group?
Sure. The the call yesterday was mostly focused around more like an update from a philosophical perspective of wallet versus agent, scope of work, etc. And the call or two previous to that was mostly focused on discussions around the Open Wallet Foundation, which we'll hear from Wenjing about today.
Great. Thanks for those updates. Let's see, did anybody on this call attend the Aries bifold user group last week? Looks like they're going over, we had talked about the bifold update, working on cleaning up some technical debt and bugs, and then next sprint working on accessibility and documentation. And then as well, the status of the NPM publishing update. So let's see, in the Aries Cloud Agent Python user group, we gave a quick update on the BCGov Code with Us to update Acapi to use the Hyperledger and non-creds implementation. We've updated the non-creds RS build. We've also updated some Tails file handling, which solved a circular dependency problem that we were encountering. Really close to MVP on revocation, working with issuance and presentation. So wrapping up the final bits there. Also did some merging and talked about converting from unqualified peer dids to did peer 3. All right. Anybody attend the Aries Framework JavaScript meetings last week or the week before? Looks like in that group as well, they've been talking about the future of Aries and discussing as well the topics, recent topics in the Aries working group calls that Sam mentioned, as well as how to create resources that make getting started with AFJ most helpful and welcoming to newcomers. Also working on iOS support. It looks like they got a status update on the shared components. And it looks like they also had a presentation from, I believe, Karim of Animo on the future architecture of AFJ. All right, anybody attend any recent URSA meetings? I guess I'm not sure they've had any recent synchronous meetings. I do know that the end of life PR got merged in, I believe, Tuesday. And so now URSA is in the Hyperledger archives, but those new repos have been created under Hyperledger, the Indy BLS signatures RS, the Python wrapper for that as well, a non-cred CL signatures and Aries BBS signatures. So those are all moved into their respective projects. And did anybody attend the Hyperledger and non-creds meeting last week? They, of course, had the big workshop yesterday, but they've also been talking about they got an update from the non-creds V2 working group. Looks like next week they're having a presentation, or they're talking about presentation data models, and they also had a presentation from IBM Zurich research group on a revocation scheme, specifically VB revocation. The Vito Biriokov, I definitely not saying that right, revocation, which is a dynamic accumulator-based revocation schema. And there are slides there if you'd like to learn more. And then also getting updates on the non-creds RS implementation progress. All right, looks like those are all of our Hyperledger groups that we keep an eye on. Moving over to the Trust over IP Foundation. As far as I could tell, there haven't been meetings in the last 2 weeks from the all members meeting steering committee. But for those from 2AP on the call, feel free to jump in and correct me. Let's see. So it looks like governance stack working group had a recent meeting 2 weeks ago. Did anybody on this group attend that meeting? Looks like they had a presentation of the ROSI system, which is a documentation system targeted towards governance. It's an automated content management system that unifies and maintains concurrent, decentralized, authentic content across ecosystems. So sounds like a really interesting presentation. How about the technology stack working group and the many task forces underneath that? Wenjin, it looks like you're involved on the technology architecture task force.
Yes, and I believe in the last maybe more than 2 weeks, 3 weeks potentially. That's been mostly a lot of people are traveling in the conferences. So this is hopefully the last week. After Denver's, I think we will start to have new updates again.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, seems like it is conference season. Lots going on at once.
It seems, yeah.
Great. Lynn, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, just skipping back a little bit there. The Governance Architecture Task Force had a meeting last night that I
Oh,
attended.
great.
I haven't been there for a while, but they were talking about some great things regarding trust and a little bit about governance. Sorry, what's the governance where it's all automated in your code? And they had some comments on that. So if anyone's interested in some of that, there was some great contributions and conversations, and not sure I agreed with all of it, but it was interesting and fun to hear what they say about trust, and a little bit about trust registries, and some of their comments on the governance work that NDCO is working on. So if anybody's interested, go, they have a recording of it.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. If you happen to have a link to that recording, feel free to send it my way and I can put it on here. So thank you for mentioning that. All right. Let's see, it looks like there's lots going on in these technology stack working group task forces. Looks like, and Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong, looks like the utility foundry group is still on hiatus, working currently with the governance architecture task force.
That's correct.
Cool. And let's see, anybody attend the ecosystem foundry working group or concepts and terminology meetings? All right, it looks like the ecosystem foundry group hasn't met this past month, but concepts and terminology has been talking about the, I believe that's terminology engine v2, and then as well the terminology design workshop for the trust spanning protocol and the TYP glossary workspace. Are there any TYP announcements or updates that anybody would like to give? All right, moving on to the Decentralized Identity Foundation. Looks like the DIDCOM spec working group, since they meet on the first Monday of every month, we've reported on their recent goings on in our last meeting. But it looks like there was a May 22nd meeting from the user group. Was anybody able to attend that one? Sam, were you involved in that one?
I was. There wasn't one on Monday, but
Okay.
there was the previous week, and we talked about a number of things, including some marketing efforts around DIDCOM as a technology, as well as the potential, or actually this is likely perhaps to happen even independent of an OWF move, but just more DIDCOM protocol work happening in the user group rather than in areas where some of it has happened traditionally.
Interesting.
So
Thanks.
it's a good meeting.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that update. Let's see, in the diff interoperability group, they met recently. Looks like it was mainly introductions of new people to the group and kind of free form discussion. And let's see, anybody attend any recent IoT special interest group meetings? Sorry, did I hear somebody speak up on that? All right. And then lastly, we have the W3C standard on the DID working group or community credentials group. Anybody attend any of these calls who would like to give a brief report? Or any other general working group updates, feel free to jump in before we move on to the next segment of our call. And Lynn, thank you for dropping the link in the chat. I will make sure to add that to the meeting page. All right, if that is sufficient time for people to jump in with anything else they wanted to say, I think I will go ahead and turn it over to Wenjin for your presentation. And I'll give up the screen share for you if you'd like to use it.
All right, thank you, Shah. Let me. All right, so probably a quick introduction to myself. I'm a senior director on technology strategy at FutureWay, and I'm going to reuse some of the exact slide deck I just used in Open Source Summit. So my work probably intersect with lots of you on here in Hyperledger, in Trust over IP, and hopefully in Open Wallet Foundation as well. So most of my work is in open source or sometimes standards organizations at FutureWay. The little bit of a quick history on the Open Wallet Foundation, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to come here. I think there are many organizations and communities working on very closely related problems, and I think we should do more of this, and hope in the future we'll have more regular interactions like this. The Open Wallet Foundation, I think Daniel is still here, and Tracy, had its start, probably first gathering would be the OSS EU in Dublin and in September of last year, and then quick forward, the official launch is in February of this year, so it's a very new organization. And Daniel really is the key for us to have a foundation at all, and his energy and vision really bring all of us together. I would say that from that day in Dublin, fast forward all these several months on the way, I personally learned so many different aspects, and I feel that a lot of the issues become much more clear, and the needs for Open Wallet becomes much more clear over these months. So hopefully I would share that with you all today. And also want to say that most of the the material will be very much like we've been discussing in Open Wallet Foundation. Anything I will try to add my personal view as well, but I will try to keep the balance between the two, and maybe reuse mostly existing material, and then later in open discussion, I'll share what I think that some of the tough questions there may be. The Open Wallet Foundation is also part of the Linux Foundation Digital Trust Initiative, so that was announced in Vancouver as well. And Hyperledger, Div, Trust of IP, and C2PA, for example, and other confidential computing is another one, are all in this space, showing how interdependent and related they are. So I have some sponsorship and community membership this is probably 1 month old. I don't know whether the new ones, but basically, you know, a lot of the names that you would recognize, and some of them very respected and active in this you know, larger community. So what is wallet and open wallet? So this is my understanding. This is a diagram a little bit older, or a presentation I used back in open source finance forum in December last year. And I was trying to see in very high level, we have wallets that proprietary, and that's very commonly seen in both iOS and Android ecosystems. And also we have open source and open standard based wallets. So that's one way to think about it. The other way to think about it is of a specialized wallet versus a general purpose wallet. So I think in both cases for these two wallets shown, they are general purpose. You could have multiple type of things or assets or object types in the wallet. And then on other side, you may have a very special wallet that's designed for a specific purpose. It could be, you know, from a single bank, for example, or it could be, let's say, only to show a certain type of ID. So that would be, you know, one way to look at it. I think Open Wallet Foundation is trying to look at a more general purpose, and also open source and open standard based. So this diagram would show the, you know, all the many different purposes, different asset types within the wallet container itself. So one way we'll look at it would be a wallet as a container, but also many different assets or object types that's within it. So when we look at the scope, I think I read about you know, the debate in Hyperledger wallet versus agent, and I think the way we use the word wallet is a more encompassing, I guess. So it would mean, of course, the agents and other functionality or standards, for example, protocols behind it that support these data types, right? So from a consumer point of view, it will be seen as various type of wallet implementation or products that's based on this core component, and that they implement some, you know, combination or subset of these types, and they're going to show up in various formats, whether it's on, you know, a mobile phone or headsets or some kind of hardware token or desktop cloud. All those are valid, you know, variations. And so the analogy, and, you know, it's not a perfect one, we always get to is a browser construction. And again, the browser typically have a good quality open source engine as a starting point. You know, when we dig deeper, of course, these analogies don't work that well, but hopefully the idea is the same, that you have standards, you have, you know, open source, good open source implementations, and potentially various kinds of application can come out of it. So one thing I would add myself would be like, instead of just browsers, these engines are actually commonly used for various applications that people don't necessarily link that back to browsers, right? So this is quite common nowadays to build your application, whether it's mobile or on desktop side or server side, that is essentially behind the scene. There's a open source engine of some kind of browser engine running there. So so that would be perfectly good way to think about this as well. And so we want to sort of position Open Wallet as a neutral place that these type of open source software implementations can happen in open source, which would support various kinds of standards. I think these names are just, you know, picked at a certain time, but there's quite a bit of different kind of standards which will support different type. You know, I've been calling it the digital assets or object types. There's another instance of rules or regulations. So this one, I think we are still experimenting or understanding what exactly need to be and how this may be implemented. And I think if you mentioned in the update on KOIP's governance structure of automating, policies, right, or governance rules, right? And so those rules and how that should be programmed, how that should represent is a very interesting and new areas that we need to tackle on. So this is explicitly recognized that is an important task that we need to do in open water. Anyway, so this has been I saw this has been posted in many places. We're trying to come up with a simple mission statement. It's probably not as easy as it is, but here is the text we have so far, and there's a few I think important points. One is collaboration and to drive for global adoption. So interoperability and the ability to adapt to different regions, different regulations, while keep open, secure, and interoperable. Those are important goals to have. And as a part of that challenge, that we thought a governance advisory council would be very useful. And we, Daniel would say, we modeled this on the ITF's, icons, similar structure. So hopefully involvement of these governmental entities in this council would help us to at least recognize and hopefully help solving the problems that combine governance and the technology solutions together. So that's one aspect of that. The other, I think, is also quite interesting or important to understand its goals and scope is the last statement, about the best practices on these with standard-based and that issuers, wallet providers, relying parties, essentially all the parties in the ecosystem, right, for a solution can use to bootstrap the implementations for their products. And that preserves user choice, security, and privacy. So I think this implies that the scope is a lot bigger than a narrow sense of a wallet. We also need the things that was inside the wallet, but also other tools and infrastructure systems that may be needed in order for this to work. So anyway, that's my reading of sort of understanding of what the mission statement looked like. This structure is very, very similar. So I'll probably skip most of this. It's very similar to Hyperledger. I think this must be copied from Hyperledger. The primary, I think, a new thing here is the government's advice council, which we mentioned before. The rest of the setup, I think, look very similar. The other difference is that we've chosen to host this in Linux Foundation Europe itself, a very new thing. And this is to recognize that there are a lot of European efforts trying to get a digital service, EIDs and others, and there's a a organized effort, right, in Europe, European Union to push for a standard way of doing digital identity and to support many kinds of digital services. So for that reason and for many other reasons, in order to sort of diversify our membership base, being more welcoming and avoid any kind of a geopolitical concerns that some of the members may have, we have chosen to host it in Europe. Okay, so start from this slide and forward my personal understanding. So just want to put that forward and welcome any input and feedback. we think wallet is extremely important in the future digital economy because it is a key component to overall trust framework. It is a very general sense of, we look at the word wallet, what does it mean? It means, I think the original meaning is a knapsack. It's something we keep things valuable. It's quite open-ended thing, right? And so it can be credential, money, that sort of thing, but also can be any type of digital objects. It's also a place for people to exercise control. So, for example, consent, selective disclosure, signing. It's a way to exercise control, and both of those things are very important. And so it's not just sort of a safe, secure storage, but also, how do we use these things in order to enable applications and enrich and make digital services much safer and privacy conserving. So those are, I think, one way to look at them. And then it is also the most direct personal interface we think we're going to have, and so it's very personal, right? It's a mean for people to take better control of their digital life, and so it is for that matter. It will be very important for for agency, for the sort of a convenience of use, which is, I think, equally important. So I think the burden of so-called choices and complexity is a impediment to a lot of these goals. So those, I think, are, to me, right, I think it's important to fall into the scope as well. And so the wallet therefore holds the key to this trust and all the new wave of application that will need that trust. So that can be more value aligned and be privacy centric and gives the authenticity, be authentic with high level of trust. And so those will be like, I look at what is a wallet and what we need to do. I hope these are more maybe imprecise, but hopefully more open and broad view of what wallet need to be. It's a better way to, I think, describe the scope. I have probably, let me see, time to do one or two more slides. One thing I want to also show is in terms of the importance of a wallet is this diagram, which is from the ARF, is the Architecture Reference Framework of EU's digital identity, where the pink are governance roles. So we've talked about governance and why it's so important. So these are, for example, national accreditation body, right? That will be a governmental probably organization there. And then the yellow are the primary roles. So these would be a provider will be a provider for accreditation or assertion, attestation, right? So credential issuers. The relying party is on the right side, and then wallet provider will be, our customer a customer of our community who would take the open source code and produce these. So those will be the providers and device manufacturer and user in the middle. So you can see the diagram shows both the sort of production of a wallet, but also the use cases around it. But the center around all of this is this purple component, and that's the wallet. So hopefully this graphically shows the central role that a wallet will play. I really like this diagram. As you dive deep into it, it shows a lot of relationships and what the wallet needs to do. we've got a huge amount of experience and learning from BC government, and their, this is I love to see them, all the presentations in Vancouver, and a proper functioning wallet that you can download and be able to support all these features. So it's a great example of that. I have a slide going into many different kinds of things. We think an open source wallet can help to help implementers as well as deployers to really make this ecosystem work. And so that's the different kind of applications we're looking at. There's a lot of new opportunities once such a wallet will be in billions of people's hands. I think it opens up a lot of new opportunities to this. So the last two slides, I want to basically report back a little bit on where we are. So these slides, let me stop the slides, and I probably would go to a web page here. How to get involved. So this is the Open Wallet Foundation's GitHub page. And the best way to really get involved would be these ones, right? So you have mailing list, Discord, GitHub, special interest groups, task forces. Since February to now, we've set up most of the processes. Our first two projects just got approved. So the main process on the life cycle goes, hopefully we very familiar to you as well, into these three stages. So that will be labs, growth, and impact. We have two lab projects. Let me click here. This is the sponsor page. Where am I? Sorry, this is what I'm trying to look at, where our membership overlap. Let me see. Okay, so I don't have it open here, but we'll probably go into over there, and let me. So this is currently both of our projects are in lab stage. So here are the two of them. Oh, Tracy. Okay, yeah. So we have SD-Jot Kotlin, and the second one is SD-Jot Python. Correct, Tracy?
That's correct. Yeah, we're waiting on the Python one to get things like DCO set up on the repository before we transfer it over. So we're working with the proposer of that to get those changes done before we create the repository here in the Open Wallet Foundation Labs area.
Exactly. And there are on-running special interest groups. I think the one I want to highlight, which I was doing earlier, is the architecture SIG, and it's having many of the meetings, and you will recognize many of the topics as well. And so that will be, for a general audience, this will be really good place to get started. The tech meeting and all others are, I think, better to look for in this page where I was earlier on these lists. So we use Discord. Have we created okay, we have. So we have a architecture special interest group and a credential format comparison special interest group. Love to see that to get started. That's brand new, just approved yesterday. So we are still growing, and I hope if I could go back to the page, I think there's a interest in seeing more sponsorship and community. Our community, I think, overlap very much a lot. But we will see, hopefully in the next few months or so, that our support group will grow, and the community gets more organized and more mature. And I think I want to stop here and maybe see Tracy and if Daniel's still here, have anything to add.
Yeah, I think those are good sorts of overview. I think Sandy has a couple of questions that he's put into the chat that is probably good for us to talk through and answer. So I'll just, Sandy, do you want to ask them verbally?
No, go ahead, Tracy. Thank you. I think I might just put my questions over there so this way you can get them when you get there. Yeah.
Yeah, let me see. The two questions. One is what's being done to loop in current major players like Google Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung, PayPal, and so forth. Current implementation are in Python. Oh, sure. Yeah, I will get to the second one first. The first one is a little more broad. So the second one on the two projects in Python are Kotlin for SD Jot. For anyone who's not familiar, it's a selective disclosure is SD. And so it's a Jot-based or web token-based mechanism to support selective disclosure of credentials. And so that's the current the two projects. We expect a lot more projects would join us. That's more broad and potentially give the coherence, for example, for the supporting structure of a wallet, etc. And so until those happens, currently these are the two projects you would see in our website, GitHub site. In terms of major players, if Daniel's here, Daniel can say more. Are you still here?
It looks like Daniel had to drop.
Okay, so I would say that we have very productive and active discussions with some of these. We have very positive response coming from them. So we hope to have at least some of them major ones join us in the near future. We're looking forward to that. We are in active discussion and learning quite a lot about different aspects of this ecosystem. Where are they from? We're also naturally very closely discussing many of the this large number of parties in the EU's digital identity effort there. And so we are also in very close contact with those groups. And Daniel, would be able to say much more eloquently on the progress there. But I would say that we definitely looking forward to those. Tracy also mentioned that we are not leaning Angel only. And if I can go back to this picture, right? Because the way we define wallet to be very much general purpose and open, and again, similar to a browser engine, I think part of the problem of today's open source browser implementation is that it's too monolithic. It has lots of things packed into one. So using them as a embedded component tend to be, well, it's a very heavy weight at least, and could be difficult. So we want to, hopefully avoid those problems and be more modular. And the operating system we're looking at definitely not Android only. We hope that can be going to both the sort of GMS, featured Android solutions, as well as all the other more open source solutions can be supported. and we will see how iOS will work. And there's a probably very interesting question on where those the framework will look like for supporting different operating systems in the mobile side, but also on the non-mobile, on the web, cloud, and other hardware and devices as well. So those are the, let me see, so we would definitely hope to parties to join us on supporting other operating systems. And I think I've been, at least personally, been talking to quite a few of them that have expressed a very strong interest in doing exactly that. So modularity will help us, and the framework will help us to hopefully better solve that problem. Any other questions for me?
This is Tim here. I have a question. Something caught my eye on slide 7, I think it was. You talk about a government, I may be wrong. And there was one slide talked about the structure. You had a government advisory or government technical advisory. Yeah, slide 9, sorry. Government Advisory Council. I'm just curious about how it is possible to get involved in that. I think government has very unique requirements around issuing of credentials that are very different from sort of private sector. And I don't know if you have any insight into how that council is formed or what the process is.
Yes, so we've had several discussions, and there's a proposal, I think, being reviewed several times already. So we will hope to publicly announce it right away. And if you could send me, contact me directly, I would introduce you to this. I will wait for the governing board to approve the charter and all that. Hopefully, very quickly, very shortly, potentially next meeting, I believe, and get that started. So we are in the preparation stage of that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
this is a great project.
Absolutely, and we want to get as broad representation as possible in this space. So we've look at it how other group trying to run this and learn the best practices and experience from those groups. And if anyone has suggestions or recommendations or feedback how to better to do that, we are all ears. We're trying to get this started as soon as possible.
Do we have time for another question?
Very quickly. Go ahead. I think somebody else is going to go on.
Yeah, sorry about that. On a couple slides down, you had a diagram with a list of things that Walt's do in the middle, and then things, I don't remember which slide it was. But I had a question about that. It was mostly black and white. Keep going.
Black and white, keep going.
Yeah.
So that's the bottom. So let me go backwards.
It might be up further and I just missed it. Keep going.
Not this one?
Nope. It was a whole long list of all the different types of things that Walt sold. Oh, that one right there. It's 5.
Oh, number 5. Oh, this one. Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah. So the question I have is that the list of all the things in the middle here are all what you might call credential focused of one form or another. Meaning it's a piece of signed data that is more or less, I'm being a little bit imprecise here, but it's a piece of signed data that is then passed to, held, and then acted on by the by the user that holds it in their wallet. None of the things listed here are separate from that, meaning there's no user-to-user communication or other types of interactions that might be between different parties in the ecosystem, but don't necessarily focus on credentials. Can you comment on the scope of the Open Wallet Foundation's goals as it relates to non-credential related activities?
Yeah, I think this problem comes up quite a bit. I remember in the trust over IP discussion as well, because in trust over IP they want to say that the scope in their technology stack is not purely for credentials, and people have difficulties trying to sort of put a name on those things that may not be credentials. And so this is not an uncommon challenge, and this diagram probably shows that as well. I would say that if you look at some of the other slides I used, that's not the intent. When we come up with these names and examples, it might show a little bit that way, but it's not the intent. I guess what would say, like, usually the answer is like, for example, money is not. So in app payment and credit debit cards are not credentials, right? So potentially the NFTs are not credentials. But nevertheless, I think you're right that it is sometimes hard to put other names in this. So that would be very good feedback. I would like to, maybe improve this diagram so we don't give that imprecise impression that way. But the way I look at a wallet, again, it's not just a container holding stuff, but also a way to exercise control. That could mean messaging, could mean just as a way to sign stuff. It could mean controlling your data. So there's a various kinds of implementations, I think, proposals out there of how do I keep private data, essentially have a direct control of how this private data are distributed and used, etc. Right? So all those, I would say, are in scope, or this diagram intend to show that may not be doing the best job.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sam. And I hope that also put the question, the debate about wallet versus agent in some fashion as well. And clearly, in order these objects in the wallet app eventually work, or the agent potentially is probably the essential core of that implementation. And now, not every product need to include all the components in it, but the agent potentially could be the center of it. That's the one that everybody would need to have. You can imagine different data types or different protocols as a somewhat of a plugin into that overall implementation, and which produces this what we call a wallet. It's beyond a secure storage, but the actual engine for the application itself. What the Aries community call agent, I think naturally is the core of that wallet. I know we run out of time. Any other? Oh yeah, so Tracy mentioned there is a SIG, the blob diagram use case. Yeah, I used to use that diagram as well, which goes into the software structure. I don't know if I can show it quickly. Tracy, that link doesn't work. Okay, anyway.
There's just a dot at the end. If you take that off, it'll work.
Oh, I see. Okay.
After
yes.
MD.
Yes. Oh, I see. Okay. And I'm fumbling into the wrong place. So if I could go there. Yeah. Here. Okay, great. This is the first time it's seen this picture, but there's an architecture picture in a similar sense, and this is really the use cases picture as well.
I
Anyway,
think the one that you're looking for, Wenjing, was under the architecture folder. There's a conceptual architecture diagram as well.
okay, here's the one I think it shows up relate to the agent and wallet as storage and protocols, and the policy agent. I like this one. ... I think there's a lot of interesting thing could happen here. So again, how do we express those policies, and how do we actually make them become a pluggable or component into the overall implementation architecture? Those are very interesting questions. Yeah, so I run out of my time, and I'll probably stop here if there are any other last questions.
Yeah, it looks like we're at just over the top of the hour. Unless anyone has any final questions to jump in with or things to say. Wenjin, thank you so much for joining us and for a great presentation and discussion. Really appreciate you joining us this morning. So thank you.
Thank you all, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks, I'm honored to present here for Open Wallet, and hopefully we can keep this conversation going.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone else for joining and giving your working group updates and reports, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.